defined by suffering and by agape love.
Yes.
And I'm into that.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
You're doing that.
Yeah, you know, and I was talking to someone about that the other day. I said, it's not that the word is used, or words that have been translated that, we don't deny that. We just deny how it's been interpreted by the Roman Church, and we just, you know, I can't go to an event like yesterday, I can't go to a place like Walmart and look around and smile and talk to people and see the grandmas and everybody in line, and I just can't picture in my mind that a God who's a God of love, that most of these people are going to be tortured forever because they don't believe a particular narrow theological construct. That to me, and so I can't disconnect the reality, and if I care that much for those people, and I don't even know them and I like them, you know what I mean? And I don't care if they're Mormon or Jehovah's Witness, I don't care. If I like them, just as human beings, and I just can't think that God gets that upset about theology and what you think, as opposed to what you do and how you live. I wanted to talk today about the subject of inspiration. And I was thinking about that. You know, Paul, when he's encouraging Timothy, he tells him, read scriptures, because there's inspiration in there. You're a young guy and you can find inspiration and he wasn't saying that the Bible was, he didn't say it's the only thing inspired. He said it is inspired, which doesn't mean other things aren't inspired. I find tons of inspiration. I mean, the other day I was just out for a walk, and a monarch butterfly, I crossed its path. And I thought, you know, he's not trying to be a hawk. It just came to me that the butterfly was not trying to be a hawk, completely content being a butterfly. And then a little later, a sparrow, you know how they kind of do the little swoop, swoop, swoop. And I can't walk too far because I'm damaged goods. But I will be back in the woods soon. So I thought today that we'd talk about inspiration, about being inspired. I know Mary has been inspired lately to move into some new areas. And you can always tell when the Spirit of God is at work, because you're getting inspired outside of your normal ruts. You know, a lot of times, you ever just got tired of either yourself, where you are, it's just too pat. You know, it's too pat. And you're saying, now I know you got so much stuff going on in your life, you ain't got time to think about it. You know, I get that too. But every now and then, I get tired of myself. I get tired of, I want my thoughts to be larger. I want God to enlarge my meditations, my dreams, my ideas, where we're going. And that's probably Louis coming in here, pulling up the rear. So the dictionary says this: inspiration is the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. I looked at my new, and I kind of stopped doing all my little creative things when I was going through all my stressful stuff. I kind of stopped carving my walking sticks, and there's a whole bunch of stuff I just kind of stopped doing. My doodling. Does anybody here mind map? Does anybody mind map besides me? You mind map? Okay.
I didn't know it was called that until just now.
It's called mind mapping. Maybe we'll do a course on it on a Sunday evening. We'll do a course on mind mapping, which is a really fun way of kind of exploring ideas. And I will put something together, and we will do some mind mapping for those that want to. Maybe some of you don't actually want to map your mind, and I get that too. I probably look like a spider web, huh? So anyway, the synonyms for inspiration are creativity, inventiveness, innovation, ingenuity, genius, imagination, I'm never going to stop being a dreamer. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. Even as a little boy, the rule was, and all the nuns knew it, never put Bill by the window. Don't let him have a pencil and a piece of paper because he'll doodle. Keep the paper from him until the last minute. If he doesn't have paper, he'll doodle on the desk. So go by and he's writing on the desk, whatever, and they just, you know. And then, but there's nothing they could do about your imagination. They might be able to stop me from doodling. I can remember at my board meetings, I was always so bored at board meetings. It's just my nature to be. I figured, take care of business. You know what I mean?
Bored at board meetings.
Yeah. And and I would be there doodling, doing doodles, and you know, and I was paying attention, sort of. Anyway, imagination, originality. This is the one thing. If the Bible is inspired, it should produce originality. Anything that says it is spiritual that does not produce originality has lost inspiration. See, most people, when they say the Bible is inspired, they're saying that because they want to trap you into their theology. So they say, it's inspired, therefore what we say about it is on equal par with God's words. Inspiration should always lead to a kind of a diversity. And last thing it should lead to is kind of a cookie. I mean, if you went to the Museum of Fine Art, and every single picture was the same, and there was only one statue, and it was the same statue, you wouldn't be boring. You would be very boring in a short. And if only one movie showed at the movie theater, and all they, you know, it would be, and they just rearranged the seats. That for me is kind of where my spirituality got stuck, and I was tired of it. And I said, well, we're just rearranging the seats, or let's just put this first and that second, or let's switch this. And I was going nuts. You know, I can remember I would forget something, and people would say afterwards, you forgot the doxology. And I thought, oh, I'm sorry, because I was just so bored with the structure that I was rebelling subconsciously. Okay. Ingenuity, genius, imagination, originality, artistry, insight, vision, muse, influence. Or, number 2, the drawing in of breath, inhalation. Right. And we've been practicing that a little bit. We've been practicing meditation now on Wednesdays for how long now, Homer?
45 minutes.
Yeah, no, but how long have we been doing it now? A couple months?
Yeah.
A couple months we've been practicing our meditation, and and I can only speak for myself, of course, but there's a growing depth for me in the meditation time. I don't. Yes, there's a growing depth in it, and that's the thing that it's hard for me to explain what that means, because it's a very subjective. You know, your own journey inward with God is a very subjective thing, and I would never want you to have to anybody to copy anybody else. It says, I'm talking about inspiration, not motivation. Motivation is about psyching yourself out, and it's usually temporary. That happens. You get caught, and then you say, you motivate yourself to never do that again. Right? You had that third glass of wine when you knew you should have stuck with 2. And you woke up in the morning and you said, and I know the girls are saying 2, 3, stop it now. These are my connoisseurs over here to the left, my wine connoisseurs. And it's all good. It's not a problem. This is how you balance yourself. It's your own life, you know, and you balance yourself in your own way. It's not my job to tell you how to balance your own soul. But we're not talking about motivation. You know, a lot of times you can go away to a retreat or something and you can get motivated, but it doesn't last. Whereas inspiration, which is a very metaphysical thing, it's a connection with the creative within you. It's a connection to God. If you can get in touch with that more often, you can maintain this kind of and I know Steve is always trying to think of new ways to reach the kids, because my wife says, always trying, what's a new way, a creative way? Because systems tend not to be inspirational. Okay? It's just the nature of systems. They might have been founded by a creative person, or a visionary, or a dreamer, or a grand idea. But then they get taken over by the managers, and the pencil pushers, and the number crunchers. Okay. And so what is required is that the people be inspirational within it. And you just learn to work within the system and do the things you need to do anyway. And I know because Diane talks to me all the time about just having she has a great concern, and as does Steve and all the other teachers here as well, for the children, and always looking for, but you can always get in that place where, like I said, you're just kind of going through the motions, and your inspiration, the core thing that led you to do the thing you do, you lost that spark. You lost that thing, and we all do that. And pastors are the worst at going through the motions. You got to say all the holy words on Sunday morning. I know I went to a memorial service, and I don't know how many times during the service they had to say he's in heaven because his sins were forgiven. All right, I get it. But 20 times is a bit excessive. All right, I understand. But he had to say that. Why? Because he has to repeat the line, right, that the system requires him to say all these different things. Oh, good. Okay. And it's okay. It's okay. I understand that. And I understand people's needs to hear those things. You know what I mean? But God is love. And, a lot of times we do the motivation is external, inspiration is internal. Inspiration comes from a completely different place if connected to it, provides a better source of motivation than just making promises or honey, I'll never do it again. Which I don't even say anymore, because I've thrown that phrase out, and I recommend all men throws that phrase out of your lexicon. Honey, I'll never do that again. Just throw it out. She already knows you're going to do it. She knows you're going to do it. Okay? But let's deal with some false motivations. First, chasing happiness. Chasing happiness. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. And pursuing it. Henry David Thoreau said this. I am a happy camper, so I guess I'm doing something right. Happiness is like a butterfly. The more you chase it, the more it will elude you. But if you turn your attention to other things, it will come and sit softly on your shoulder. When you are seeking for happiness, you've lost you've lost the sense that your inspiration gives you the direction of why you're on earth. What is your purpose? What's going on, right? And love is the bottom line for inspiration. You don't even have to. It is amazing when you study, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit next week. Beethoven, or Brahms, or Einstein. When they got their epiphanies, they were just goofing off. When Beethoven wrote Ode to Joy, he was deaf when he wrote the Ninth. And most of his symphonies, completely deaf. When the first time he did the Ninth Symphony, and he was sitting in the front row, and when it was over, everybody got up and there was a thunderous applause, but he just sat there because he couldn't hear it. And so somebody, realizing that he couldn't realize that everybody was clapping, they put him up front, and he turned around, and then all the people rose individually again and gave him and he began to cry. But he heard it all in his mind. He heard it all in his mind. And I was listening to Beethoven's Ninth this week. well, for a while, I stopped listening to classical music, and I realized I had to reconnect again with classical music because it provides something. It provides something in my mind that my mind needs. Okay? It provides all kinds of connections that I have to have. And so this week I've been re-listening to Brahms and Beethoven. Fear is a terrible motivator. It's one of the primary motivators of religion, is fear. We talked about that earlier. Hell. Fear. More people came to Jesus because they were afraid to go to hell. Well, I don't want to go there, so okay, I'll just sign up. Because who does want to go there? You know, the thing is, what finite human being can even comprehend the idea of infinity? You can't comprehend it. I remember as a young man, I used to play a mind game where I would sit and think of the word forever. And I would get so far into it that I had to back off. It was just this great dark void, and the further I took myself into it, just with my mind just drifting into all the ramifications of infinite. It was like, whoa, oh, okay. And sometimes I would scare myself, you know what I mean? Because you take yourself places in your meditations. Guilt is a terrible motivation. It's one of the primary ways, rather than inspire many people, rather than inspire their children, they motivate through guilt. Or husbands and wives, or any couple, gay or straight. Students and teachers. And it doesn't last. Now I can remember every now and then, I remember one time, even though we knew our son was going to graduate, we intimated that he might not graduate, even though we already knew he had enough points. But we didn't want him to slow down at the end just because he was in. And so we lied, right, honey? We told a parable. We told a parable. There was a certain boy who might not have enough credits to graduate high school. Oh, she said, "Am I that boy?" And he worked hard, and that's what we wanted. So I'm not saying every now and then a little guilt, you know, but use it like a light seasoning, you know what I mean? But as a primary, but as a primary way of motivating yourself, and don't think that we don't all have a tremendous amount of this kind of view of ourselves. And most of it is subconscious because we've buried it.
Does he know this story?
What, honey?
Does he know this story?
Yes, he does. He does now. Greed is a terrible motivator. Anger, oh my, anger, terrible motivator. Which is why my last board meeting I actually got up and left.
You did?
I did, because I was getting all redhead and Irish, and it wasn't going to be a pleasant sight. It wasn't a pleasant sight for the little bit I was there. And of course, vengeance. Terrible, terrible motivator. All things that you really don't need. Brahms said this: those who enjoy their own emotionally bad health and who habitually fill their own minds with the rank poisons of suspicion, jealousy, and hatred, as a rule take umbrage at those who refuse to do likewise, and they find a perverted relief in trying to denigrate them. The primary, in the West, our primary motivation with, especially religiously, is fear and guilt. You do a study of theology and you will discover that it didn't take them long to figure out what was the easiest way to motivate a human being. When you run into young people, you find out, it's always easier. And we made a very intentional effort very early on with our sons, but especially with our daughter, that we would walk a completely different path with her. A completely different path. And we did. And point of truth. Inspiration is not a hostile takeover. Okay? It's not a hostile takeover. Okay, God, just take over. No, it doesn't work that way. It's a partnership. It's a dance. Now, you don't need inspiration if you're not seeking something to be creative or asking questions about what you don't know or asking questions about what you think you do know. See, you have no need for inspiration. Well, then why would Source or God or Spirit, why do you need it? You don't need it. You don't need inspiration. If everything's going fine, inspiration is for people who are seekers, discoverers, people who, and sometimes that's nothing more than just being unhappy with yourself, which is cool. You know, sometimes you get on inspiration when you're unhappy, and not unhappy in the sense of guilt, but unhappy in the sense that you know it could be better, or you know you could do better, but yet not drifting into legalism, but looking to be inspired, you know, to do better. It's actually a matter of choosing life over death is what it is. Which is why you cannot be inspired by the law or by legalism. Why you cannot be inspired by judgmentalism or very many isms at all for that matter. They just don't inspire. What they do is they pop up. Right. You know all these things for sure about eternity, or where almost everybody goes. Well, here, they'll just show you, right? They use an inspired book and then they ruin it by not viewing it inspirationally. And then when you would view it inspirationally, they say, oh, you're not allowed to view it inspirationally, it's got to be literal. You say, well, if it's inspiration, maybe it needs to be understood spiritually. Since it's breathed by Spirit, and part of inspiration is breath, then maybe to understand it requires an inspirational heart. Right? See, Jesus said, I've come that they may have life and learn to live that life abundantly. Have no fear that Jesus was there to cast out fear, prisoners, all manner of methods that the theologians at that time had used to suppress people. And their suppression of the people also suppressed their society. They had no vision for the future, only vengeance. Only God's going to come and get even with our enemies. Their eschatology became one of destruction, one of death. Couldn't wait, and the holy people couldn't wait to run around, catch somebody doing something wrong, so they could stone her to death. It was all death. It was a culture of death, a theological death, and so now you see amongst the Jews have completely broken free of that. And where do you see the great creativity? Well, now that we're talking about Einstein and other things, where do you see creativity? It's funny that most of the Jews have broken free from literalism and legalism. The Christians took it over. Most of the Jews don't understand it that way. They always understand it figuratively, spiritually. They look at it, they say, well, that can't mean that. Like we saw last week. Well, that can't mean that you're in heaven and you're looking at a person and they're suffering and you won't bring them water. What is that? Don't call that love. You call whatever it was, but if that's how you interpret Lazarus and the rich man, then, oh my goodness, I don't want that heaven. Oh, Pastor, I just said that. I just said I do not want the heaven where I can perceive this people suffering, and I am not allowed. I remember one time I wrote an article many years ago on my blog about a rebellion in heaven. You see, there was a rapture, and we all went up, and then there was a group of people up there that realized that there was still people suffering on the earth, and so there was a rebellion in heaven, and a group of saints wanted to go back to earth because they just didn't want to sit around eating, getting fat and sassy. And so there was a rebellion in heaven, and part of the people that were raptured were cast back to earth because that's where they wanted to go. Right? They wanted to go back to where their family was, the people they loved. They wanted to make a difference. They wanted to sit around on puffy clouds with wings. That was my first article where I started getting in trouble. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Question: what must we do to live an inspired life? First, we must cut off negative information. Here's what happens. A lot of times when you have to ask yourself what you have to get rid of before you ask yourself what you can add. And so, now not constructive criticism, but you'd be surprised how little of that you actually get. I get constructive criticism from a few people who I trust immensely that they love me. Everybody else, it's just an opinion, and trust me, it goes in one ear and out the other. I just leave that door open all the time. Shoop! Just never in Prince. You have to be valued. You have to be very valued in my life in order for me to receive that. Otherwise, I just go into redhead mode. Huh. Huh. I'm not listening when I do that. Oh, hey. Huh. And when I'm making grunt noises, and I'm not actually asking you any additional questions, because if I was really interested in what you were saying, I would ask additional questions. So if I'm not asking any additional questions, okay, yeah, nice. Oh, I'll take that into consideration. Not. So here's some things that even last week I was thinking about. Every now and then we need to digitally detox. All right, and my wife's been talking to me about this. Digitally detoxing. And she's right. She is one of those people in my life who the Spirit of God speaks to me through her. So she's in that class of people who I pay attention when she talks. And I thought, if my wife says I need to digitally detox, then I probably am spending too much time on the computer or the cell phone, or now I'm not talking about music or in television too, right? Dish or whatever. You know, I'm not a big TV person. And so I began to think about that. Okay, I need to limit this and limit that. You know, when I go for my walks, anymore when we go places now, I leave my phone in the car. Because you know what? They couldn't get in touch with me before there was a digital phone. But what did they do then when they had a crisis? Well, I had to wait till I got back to my answering machine. Remember the old answering machines? Remember before answering machines, where if they didn't catch you, too damn bad. You know what I mean? Too bad, you didn't catch me. I wasn't in. I've been calling and calling. Well, keep calling. So like the other day, we were out having a dinner, and I left my phone purposely in the car. Because I don't need to be a slave, and most of the time people that are calling you that have problems are the ones that always call you with problems. But they got you. You know, there's a connection there that you should lean out a little bit. I'm not saying you cut it off, but you need to lean some connections out. And then social media. That's one of the areas, and everybody in here is pretty good at not being mean-spirited on social media. There's a few people that still work out their angst in social media, and it's terrible. You know what I mean? Because it's all for everybody to see. You know what I mean? Your whole argument with your old man is right there on Facebook, and you really should not do that. You really should not do that. And don't drink and text. I shouldn't have to tell you that. Don't drink and text, and don't drink in Twitter, and don't drink in Facebook. Just don't do it. If you're drinking, you don't open that machine, because you're going to say something mighty dumb. Okay, so we need a detox. Another thing we need to do to cut off in order to make ourselves open for inspiration, vampire people. You got any vampire people in your life? You can handle maybe one, maybe two, but you got to keep them on a long leash, okay? I'm talking to somebody, and I said, well, honey, the problem is that you've just got to cut off those relationships. She's not ready. Right? You know, and then when you begin, sometimes when you cut relationships with people, and then you begin to oppose them. Now, sometimes it's righteous to oppose something that's wrong, but there's a fine line where you move from opposition to anger, to even if you use humor, which is my way. See, I'm not going to say anything angry. I'm just going to say something so funny that it ticks you off, because it's going to hit you at a place that's really effective. But I can do it by sleight of hand, saying something funny on the slide. So opposition, I know it's one of the things I've been looking at, is that I need to be over being opposed to what was. See, because there is no inspiration in opposition. This is why nothing is getting done in America. See, so there's no inspiration, there's no creativity. If there's no creativity, there's no new ideas, right? Because we're all busy fighting and opposing each other, because of course we all know we're right. And yes, everybody is going to hell. I know, it's all about argumentation and opposition. And we need to move past that. It says of Christ, the guy, there's a reed that just blows in the wind. It didn't mean he didn't take a position. He just realized the fallacy of opposition. And he came in and they said, look, we're going to crown you king, and then let's really oppose the Romans. He said, that's not how it gets done. It's not how kingdom work is accomplished. Inspiration. Point of truth. Opposition is not inspiration. It will not lead to creative acts in the end. Yes, when your pen is on the paper, there is opposition between the paper and the tip of the pencil or pen. But that's not the creativity. There is some opposition when your brush is on the canvas. Yes, there's opposition. But that's the way opposition should be used, right? When you're building something, there's a bit of opposition there. Boom, bang, bang, boom, bam. Okay? Creativity, there's a bit of opposition, but that's just as you're moving things back, and that's healthy. That's healthy opposition. Okay? But so you have to challenge your own negative thoughts. And my goodness, this is the area that this is where most of your conversation occurs. The constant chatter of either what you think about yourself or what you think about others. Am I the only one, or I suppose I know I'm not. So you have to begin. Inspiration requires you to be very intentional. Creativity is very intentional. It's not accidental. It's just not. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to sit down and to meditate in silence and to realize I don't have all the pieces I need to move forward. And that some of the pieces I need to move forward come from a place I can't see. But it shows up. Boom, and I've learned to spot it now. I've learned to spot it. So what you say in private and public, your language defines your position. What you write, and this includes all social media, public and private. And then if you begin to control those areas, then what you think will follow suit. So when I began to have different ideas about hell and life and what God's priorities were, and then I started reading people that I used to think didn't know anything, who I called, when I was over here, I wouldn't read anybody that disagreed with me. So I started reading people that disagreed. And I realized, gee, I disagree with myself. I actually was wrong. Oh my goodness, that's the hardest thing to say when you think you know everything and you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. I think I was wrong. Oh my goodness, now you have to challenge all your ideas. You have to rethink them. Some you were only half wrong, some you were 3/4 wrong, and you realize you could possibly still be wrong, and then you realize to be okay with that, and then you really love the idea, I don't know, becomes this most wonderful phrase of wisdom. I don't know. I don't know. Right? You don't. It's the scientific method. I don't know, but yeah, here's what I do know. I do know the relationships I have. I do know love works. I do know this. I do know these are the things experientially. I've tested them. They work in my life. They bring balance to my life. They bring harmony to my life. I'm better off since I've been doing this and this and this and moving in this direction, and I'm going to keep going that way. What you think will follow suit, and you'll begin to live holistically. A lot of people don't live holistically. You know, they have a theology, but yet when they visit their family, even though their theology is telling them that the bulk of their family is not going to be with them in the afterlife, and yet so you begin to be all broken up, like an impressionist painting. You can't quite get a picture of who you are. It's like the lines aren't smooth. And it feels good when you start moving into that space where it becomes more holistic, right, Deb? It becomes more holistic. Not Han said this: people deal too much with the negative, with what is wrong. Why not try to see positive things, to just touch those things that make them bloom? Peace Pilgrim said this, and I don't know if you've read any of her works, but anybody read any of Peace Pilgrim's work? Great. If you realize how powerful your thoughts are, you would never think a negative thought. And don't worry about it. There won't be a shortage. If you stop thinking negative thoughts about yourself, there'll be plenty of people that'll think about them for you. Seriously. There's no shortage of negative thoughts. Turn on the TV. Just ask anybody. There's no shortage. There's a shortage of positive thoughts, especially within your own mind about yourself. But you see, we have a theology that says you're born bad. Bad to the bone. Boy, you're born bad, and man, you're heading down in flames unless you get rescued at the last minute. You know, it was so funny. I was at this memorial service, and a lot of wonderful people cared for this man in the last year of his life when he had cancer. But someone explained it this way, and I thought, well, it's a blessing. God brought the right nurse who did the right things. God brought the right oncologist who cared about him. And I thought, wait a minute. Didn't those people do any loving works on their own, or were they just overtaken by God that didn't have a choice? What? Does God have to get all the credit for everything? You know what I mean? Because, but why not say his nurse sacrificed her time, went there when she didn't have to be there, and gave credit to the divine that was in her? Yeah. Rather than to approach it as though, you know, if God's not directing everything, nobody's going to do good for each other. When we're all in the image of God, you never respond. God and God responds inspirationally to people who God lets the rain fall on the just and the unjust. Be like your Father in heaven. This is how it is. You become magnanimous, generous, creative. You go the extra mile. My honey does. Everybody knows it about my honey. That's her inspiration. They're not required to work the extra hours and do the things. She'll just do it. And she would never say anything about it, and people just, but what happens is people keep watching, think that chick keeps working for nothing. I can remember she volunteered for years with her sons, and finally someone said, the volunteer works harder than the person getting paid. Give her a job. This is because it's the nature of inspiration. Let's go back and talk about inspiration a little bit. And it's something metaphysical, spiritual, if you prefer. Albert Einstein said this: the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. So you'll never be inspired if you're already God. You know what I mean? You make people when they before you can even say anything, they say, I know that. You're not allowed to give them anything. They can't receive a thing. They're just closed off. Right? The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and all science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. We talked about that last week. Jesus always said, whoever has eyes to see, whoever has ears to hear. Well, why did people not have ears to hear? Because they thought they had it all figured out. God in a box, so to speak. Right? So, how do we get in touch with the source of inspiration? And we're going to pick up again on this next week. Because but the first thing I want to say is, slow down, smell the roses. Slow down. Now, you have to choose to slow down. That's one reason why we meet on Wednesday nights and meditate. You slow down. You know, the first time you meditate, your mind's saying, what are you doing? You are wasting 45 minutes here in complaints. Do you know there's stuff you could be doing? Or worse yet, there's stuff not getting done. Do you understand how your mind works, right? The guilt, right? There's stuff not getting done. And my wife will tell you, guilt does not motivate me. It never has. Only because it was used to excess in my youth, and I've become callous to it. I'll say this. Living in Anza, I would say nature is a source of inspiration. So don't walk fast in order to lose weight. You see, a lot of people go for their walks, but why are you going for your walk? I'm going for a walk to lose weight. Oh, but my goodness, you're wasting the beauty.
You need to go and smell the roses. And you don't lose weight walking fast.
You
can lose
don't.
just as much walking slow.
You know, Raphael Bonham said this, nature always wears the colors of the spirit. I think because we live in Anza, wouldn't you think there'd be more spiritual people up here seeing us how there's so much beauty? And yet, there's more opinionated people than I've ever met in my life.
Spiritual ones are hiding.
They're hiding, and yet you're surrounded by beauty. You could just go and commune with God anytime you want. All you do is get out of your house. And when's the last time you walked in the rain? When is the last time you walked in the rain?
Yesterday.
Amen. Me too. You know, all right, this is good stuff. Brother out there running his tractor in the rain. You see, anyway, we'll pick up on this next week. These are things that if you want to be inspired, there is the story in the Old Testament where God speaks in nature in the moments of silence between events. And I don't know why this is, and the great mystics talk about this. The space between the dark and the dawn. The space between the day and the night. The space just after a rain or just before a rain. There are this is real stuff. This is real spiritual information. So that you begin to realize that, and the whirlwind came, and then this came, and this came, and then just after the whirlwind, God's voice was not in the whirlwind, but just after it, like the eye of the storm, just after it, in that moment where it's so calm, that's the place to listen. That's the place where you find inspiration, right? It's just how it is. A lot of times I schedule my walks for the evening so I can catch that spot just between the light beginning to fade and the different shades falling on the trees, and more critters come out, and so we'll pick up again next week. We're going to talk about nature, music, a lot of other places to find inspiration within yourself. Kingdom of God is within you. We're going to talk about that. Yes, we're going to talk about meditation. We're going to talk about it. But anyway, I've said enough. One of the areas we get inspiration is from music. So the girls are going to do some songs for us this morning.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Please do.
I sit out in my yard every night and I can see 50 different varieties of birds, rabbits, sometimes squirrels. I mean, the quail, the doves, all of them, sitting in one pile, eating and getting along. Why can't humans do that?
Amen.
You know?
There's a lesson.
Yeah, it's really, that's what gives me a charge every day.
Yes.
You know?
Meet God there.
The first thing I think I lose is my eyesight.
To be continued next week. Inspiration. To be continued.